What does it feel like when you stop basing your entire life on how other people are thinking and feeling?
Well, to be honest, at first it feels really awkward and wrong. And that's okay. That's a sign of growth. But when you get to the other side, it's pure freedom, really.
And it's very freeing after. It's kind of like bungee jumping or base jumping or parachuting. I've only been parachuting one time. It was terrifying to jump out of the plane, but man, was it freeing once I landed.
No, when I started living my life not based on what other people were feeling and what other people were thinking, I felt like I got to be me for the first time in my life. I got to figure out who I was. I got to actually really like who I was. And that was everything I'd been chasing my whole life, was trying to like who I was.
I no longer waited for someone else to feel good so I could feel good. And I feel good now because I like where I am and who I am. And that switch is ultimately where my confidence comes from, where my willingness to do hard things comes from, my willingness to stand in hard, difficult conversations. It's where my integrity comes from now.
Welcome to No Alcohol Needed, the podcast. You are hanging out at the intersection of emotional wellness, personal growth, and living an alcohol-free life. Here we share everything we've learned and continue to learn about how to be happy, no alcohol needed. Hey, everybody. Welcome to No Alcohol Needed, the podcast. So happy to have you hanging out with us today. We are here with Sean and Janice, and I just want to remind you guys, make sure you visit our website, noalcoholneeded.net. Click on Meet the Voices, and you can get to know Sean, you can get to know Janice, you can get to know all the other amazing people that we have join us here. We want you to know all of the cool things that they're doing in this community also. So make sure you check that out. We're going to jump right in. So you avoid conflict with everything you have, and you constantly guess how other people are feeling. You try to adjust yourself based on that. You only ever feel like you're enough if the people around you believe that you are. You take care of everyone around you, but you struggle to take care of yourself. So what do all these things have in common? They can all be signs of codependency. For many of us, we go through life thinking these things are all normal, but the reality is they generally keep us trapped inside a life that always feels a little bit painful, and we're not quite sure why. And codependency is a word that I think gets thrown around a lot these days, and it's also a word that's very heavily misunderstood. So we're going to talk about what it actually means today, what it actually looks like in real life, how it's impacting you, and also we're going to talk about how you can start working your way towards freedom from codependency. So I'd love to start off with you guys if we can just talk a little bit about what actually is codependency, and what ways are people misunderstanding it. We've got so much stuff out there on social media, Instagram, TikTok, that references codependency, and I think a lot of times it gives people the wrong impression of what this actually means. So I'd love to talk about that first, what that means to you and how you think people maybe have misunderstood it.
Okay. I'll start. That was some codependent behavior right there. So can you repeat the first question? Just what is my definition of codependency, or?
Yeah, what actually is codependency, and then what are some of like the misunderstandings?
It came about right around the same time that AA was forming, and it came about in the recovery community, and it was really focused on, why are these women staying with these drunk men? What's wrong with them? There must be something wrong with them that they would be living with this drunkard. And they started realizing that the relationship was symbiotic. The drunkard needed the codependent to fix all of his problems for him that he created. And the codependent needed the drunkard to feel like she had purpose in life. That was like the beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's become so much more than that. I mean, that's actually really not even what today's modern day codependency feels like or is actually defined as. My favorite definition is codependency is, I'm going to check your temperature to see how I'm going to feel.
Yes.
Right. And so when I do that, I end up living your emotional life for you. So I don't have to experience your negative emotions. I navigate your negative emotional life for you. So I don't have to experience that. Because if you're not okay, I'm not okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my quickest definition of codependency and how I see it in my own life and in all the work that I do.
Go ahead,
I would
Janice.
say my definition of codependency is when the cost of being there for you takes away from me. When I'm losing myself or getting sick from my care from you. For instance, like as a mom, we lose sleep when our kids are little, right? I mean, you have no choice. So that's not codependent behavior that I'm sleep deprived because my infant or my 18-month-old can't sleep through the night. But, quick example, when my 25-year-old son is home studying for the bar exam and I lose sleep at night because I'm hypersensitive to his actions and moves around the house, that I'm worried about, like making everything quiet and peaceful for him, then that is my losing myself, my giving up of myself for his convenience, his comfort.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And yeah, that all shows up so much too when I think about what codependency looks like for me. For me, it's like I'm not okay unless you're okay. And that means you feel okay, you're successful, you're happy with me. Like it's managing everything about other people's feelings and thoughts and perceptions and actions and choices in a way that I know is best for them. And I just want everything to be okay for them. And only then can I feel like maybe I'm okay, which is impossible. And so at the end of the day, I'm just never okay. I think that's kind of how it showed up for me. It shows up for a lot of the people that I work with. It's about managing everybody else to
Yeah.
your own detriment and to your own self-abandonment.
I think you said something there. It's like to your own self-abandonment. Sean, I really liked how you brought up where it all started, where it came from. And even that definition still today, we've elaborated on it, but it's still a very simplified version of what it looks like. And it could be like a mother to a child, a father to a child. I like codependency between parents and children, I think is super, super common. As a lot of where I get my value from your value.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I get my value from your value or your accomplishments, like I need my kid to do this thing and be successful so I can feel successful. And as soon as that success is a value rating on myself, I've now put that much more pressure on them for me to feel good.
For sure. It complicates every relationship so unnecessarily. And I think the hardest part is we think we're doing good. Like that's what we think we're supposed to do. And so we're adding so much more pain and misery to relationships that it just doesn't need to be there. I think when we talk about like how do people misunderstand codependency, one of the things that I hear people use to like one of the ways I hear people describe it is that they just always need people with them. And it's this like I'm codependent on my husband because I need him to always be around. And I think it depends on how that actually plays out. But I've heard so many people describe codependency as just a need to be around other people. And to some extent, maybe that there's like an earning of your worth and the validation and stuff that comes from that. But I don't know, there's one person that I've listened to talk about, in the sobriety circles where he's like, my wife and I were codependent drinkers. That just meant they drank together. I don't feel like that's a definition of codependency. And so I think, if we talk about, I'd love to hear what other things you guys have maybe heard in your circles or social media or in your own work that maybe is kind of an example of what codependency isn't. So we can just clarify that for our listeners. And if not, that's awesome.
No, I think what you're describing is more dependency. I
Yes.
depend on people to be around, so I'm okay. That's not codependency. That's just damn right dependency. That's all
Right.
that is. I think, but it gets kind of convoluted. Or, I can't go to, like you said, I can't go to dinner by myself. I'm codependent. No, that's just insecure. Um,
Right.
right. I depend on my my spouse for me to feel whole, to feel like I need to have somebody in my life so I'm okay. No, that's more insecurity. That's not codependency. That
Hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah,
You
that's
How about
a
you, Jen?
really good point and a really good thing to clarify.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I stumbled over that because I found myself, I'm quick to judge myself behaviors as calling it codependent. I mean, in a way, this is helping me open my eyes. I think I've embraced that label. I wonder if I use it to excuse some of my behaviors every now and then. Like, well, I'm just codependent. So, of course, I'm going to be a little more emotional over blah, blah, blah. Um, and essentially, no, it's not necessarily codependency. It could be insecurity. It could be, a character trait. It could be my Enneagram that, over worries, over prepares. I'm Enneagram 6. And so I tend to like triple prepare for everything. Um, yeah, so this is a really interesting idea.
Codependency sounds so much more palatable than insecure.
For sure.
I'd much rather say I'm codependent, because that's almost, it can be perceived as I'm just really, really caring, right? I'm just really overly caring about people. No, I'm really insecure about myself, and so I need other people to make me feel okay.
That's the whole like external validation for the internal
Yeah,
comfort.
it's called other esteem. We have self-esteem, which we create on our own, or other esteem, whether it be the car I drive, the person I'm dating, how much money I have in my bank account. That's other esteem. And that never, ever fills that God-sized hole, as they say in 12 steps.
Right.
I want to throw out this phrase because this is making me think too. A friend of mine I ran into briefly, and I'm like, well, how are things going? And she looked at me and she goes, and I really love this quote. She goes, well, you're only as happy as your unhappiest child. And I immediately identified with that. But now that we're talking about this, that makes me think, is that codependent or is that? So I'm going to defer to you guys. Is that, just a reality as a parent that we do when our kids are hurting? Because and I'm justifying it's my kid. If it was a coworker, I'm only as happy when I say it like that, when I say, I'm only as happy as my unhappiest coworker, that's just ridiculous. Is it ridiculous? I need some reality check here from you guys.
Sean, I'm going to chime in here, and I want you to correct me or whatever it is. You might have to. I'm just, yeah, tisk. You can send me a text message and twack me later. You're only as happy as your unhappiest child.
Uh-huh.
I mean, we're allowed to feel sad when somebody else feels sad, somebody we care about. I don't think there's that's codependent nature in and of itself. Someone dies, you cry, right? Like, how are we going to disconnect feeling sad for sympathy for somebody else, empathy, whatever that is for what somebody else is feeling, and then what are you doing about your child's sadness that is to alleviate their sadness for your own comfort? And I think I got that right. And I think when you get to that point, then your emotion is codependent on theirs. When you can allow your kid to just be sad and you are sad for your kid, then your emotion is completely interdependent from theirs.
That's just empathy.
Yes.
We are, as humans, we are supposed to empathize, especially with the people that we care deeply about. That's my thought. If I think about my hurting kid, of course I'm gonna be hurting with her. Absolutely, and I think that I'm supposed to. I'm not abandoning everything that I am in order to try to make her feel better, or to wanna fix her situation. I'm just feeling sad with her because I empathize deeply with the people that I love.
Now, I'm going to flip this one a little bit and or elaborate a little bit more. If your kid is sad and you're sad about your kid all of the time because your kid is sad, I think then you're diving into something that's a deeper issue than just empathy. If it's like a constant thing, if you're reliant on all of your kids, and if all of my kids are happy, then I'm happy. But if all of my kids, if one of my kids aren't happy, then I'm not happy. Then, and that's like a permanent fixture, regardless of how you're back into the codependency part.
Mhm. That's
If
the
it
checking
takes
the
more than
temperature.
it gives,
Yeah.
if it takes more than it gives, it's probably codependency. Empathy is normal, but that gives to me to be empathic towards you. I feel a sense, well, I've got a lot of oxytocin in my system when I'm empathic towards you. So that makes me feel good. I know I'm caring for you, but I'm also not in the other room rocking back and forth going, okay, what's going on with Steve? What's going on with Steve? I can't function. I can't function. That's taking more than it's given.
Mm.
Mhm. Definitely.
See, I want
Yeah.
to fall back on the behavior part. Then I would ask myself, what behaviors am I engaging in? Am I not? Am I trying to fix my kids' feelings? That would be codependent, right? Trying to fix their
Well,
feelings.
I mean, again, I think we can split hairs here
Yeah.
very, very quickly. I honestly think if we're going to look at codependency as a pathology, it needs to rise to the level of that. Like, is this really
Mhm.
disrupting my life? I mean, I
Right.
get it. I've got 3 kids, and when one of them's hurting, I'm hurting, and that's going to be a normal, everyday thing. But if it's very similar to my wife can drink. She can have a glass of alcohol. It doesn't take more than it gives. She doesn't have a problem. It's the same
Mhm.
thing with being empathic. You can
Mhm.
be too empathic. You can be addicted to empathy, which is codependency.
So I'm gonna kinda I have a list of questions here that I generally run through. I'm gonna switch things around a little bit because I think this really fits. When we're talking about codependent behavior, I might do a thing that is could be labeled as codependent, like Sean's saying, but that doesn't necessarily mean codependency is completely destroying my life. So what
Mhm.
I'd like to talk about is, like, what are some of the actual impacts, the actual cost
Mhm.
of, if we're talking about like pathological codependency, how is that showing up in people's lives? What is it actually costing them? What impact will they notice? So we've got listeners that I'm sure when we talk about this, they're going to be like, "Oh my God, that's a thing that I struggle with." What does that look like?
Well, for me, it's, I almost said self-harm, but it's not physical self-harm, but it is self-neglect, let's put it that way. So,
Definitely.
that don't taking not taking care of myself, putting, someone else's priorities before mine,
Yeah.
it could be now and then that's well, that's a whole whole 'nother topic. That's also some ways that I can avoid dealing with my own issues. Like, "Oh, I gotta take care of this thing first." But I think, oh my god, I just rambled, I lost what was the question?
What does codependency actually cost someone
At the
emotionally in their
cost.
life?
Well, it's resentment, it's self-respect, it's time for yourself, it's self-care, and it certainly contributed to my drinking. I mean, I always said that my primary problem was codependency first, and I ran through all of my other coping skills until they didn't work anymore. Some of them were socially acceptable addictions like running. And then finally, I found alcohol. But I think the deepest part of the codependency for me, which was kind of a survival skill from my dysfunctional childhood, was becoming what you wanted me to be in order to fit in, be accepted. I mean, at my worst, that was it. So much to the point. The cost was when I gave up alcohol and people were like, okay, it's time to work on you. I had no idea who I was, what I wanted, what to do next. I mean, it was honestly like a shell, and I had to grieve the loss of me that I had gradually due half to my drinking, but half to my codependency, working so hard on trying to please other people and be what other people wanted that I honestly lost track of myself.
And
Mhm.
so, Janice, you basically nailed the first thing that came to my mind Julie, when you asked this question. The first place I went to was self-abandonment. It's a word that I like to use because when I first heard it personally, it smacked me upside the face. And it was a word that I was able to take and say, wow, I'm literally ignoring my own needs, wants, reality for the betterment of someone else's needs, wants, and reality. And that comes at the cost of my identity.
Right.
And I mean, one time, okay, but one time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times,
Mhm.
my reliance on that is over time came at my detriment. I didn't know who the hell I was either, Janice. And that's the self-abandonment. If you're at the point where you don't know who you are, and you've abandoned yourself to the point of my identity is what other people have given me, and that's what I've latched onto.
Which comes with depression and anxiety and self-hatred and like a whole list of spiraling thoughts and shame and never good enough and all of that stuff. Like that's where I landed. I felt like I was never good enough ever because my whole life revolved around other people's expectations, other people's needs, other people's wants, other people's ideals, everything. And I tried to live my whole life trying to meet all of those. And
Mhm.
when you do that little by little, I mean, a lot of us started doing that when we were children, right? And we just, move through the different seasons of life and we meet new people come into our lives. And that's like a new set of expectations come into our lives. So we start trying to meet those, and it's one further step away from who we really are. And so many of us, I think, probably identify with that same concept that we're just so worried about. And for me, that's the only way I could feel like maybe I was good enough. Like I had this overarching belief from the time I was a child that I just wasn't good enough, that I just didn't deserve love. And I mean, I can remember being, 8, 10, 11 years old feeling that way. And eventually, meeting expectations became my solution. Being what I thought I had to be became my solution. And that became codependency, where I looked around everywhere I could for what expectations I could meet, what needs I could take care of in order to try to feel like I was good enough. It didn't work. It left me drinking all the time. It left me struggling with suicidal ideation. Like it was the cost there was massive because on the outside I was taking care of everyone, and inside I was sort of wishing that I could just die. And that's what I was living with. So that's an incredible cost. We think we're just being nice to people and we're just doing what we're supposed to do. And we really just wish we could escape the life that we've created for ourselves. That's what that
Yeah.
felt like for me.
I want to piggyback on kind of what all three of you have said is this idea of, it just takes away your authenticity.
Mhm.
Codependency is the antithesis of authenticity. Um, there's a thing in the therapeutic community called the Karpman drama triangle. I don't know if you've heard of this, but basically somebody that's codependent can take on three identities. They are first a rescuer, right? I'm the rescuer. I'm going to come in and save the day. And then the people that they're rescuing don't really appreciate it. Then they become a victim. Oh, look at all these things I'm doing for you, and you're not reciprocating. And eventually that doesn't change. And so then they become a persecutor. Oh, you're an SOB because I did all these things and you didn't appreciate me. So that's your identity. That's your authenticity. I'm going to either be a rescuer, a victim, or a persecutor. And you can stay in that over and over and over again. One thing I don't know if any of you witnessed this, but codependency is a breeding ground for perpetrators.
Oh, yeah.
If
Mhm.
you are codependent, the narcissists in the room are going to find you and drain you of all of your energy. And everybody watching this, I bet they have a story. I know I do. Right? They can see that kindness that Julie or Janice were talking about and be like, "Oh yeah, I can exploit that."
Mhm.
Um, so I think that the biggest takeaway for me was I lost my authenticity with my
Mhm.
codependency. The problem is that if you don't want to be codependent, you have to start holding boundaries and speaking your own truth, and that's hard for most of us, especially early on.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I just want to point out again the whole survival skill point of view, and that, I think that people pleasing stuff originated in, my family of origin. I'm not blaming them,
Mhm.
but I
All
think
right.
I don't want anyone listening to this to think like this is something we chose or
Mhm.
that you chose. I mean, just like the disease concept of addiction. I mean, some of this is our survival adaptation.
Mhm.
Until we know better, we don't do something different. So, I mean, I can look back and go, well, of course, that was what I did. Try and keep everyone happy, keep the conflict down, and the best way to get attention and feedback to try and prove that I was almost as good as, or try to be as good as, was to live up to my parents' expectations, man, that rolled over into relationships and everything else.
Mhm.
So,
That's true for so
Uh,
much of what we talk about on this podcast. We talk about people pleasing and perfectionism and and all these different things. And it's not like it's something that you chose that you started doing and that you're doing wrong. It's we
mhm,
all learned how to survive as children. We had to, whatever that meant. And for most of us, survival, it just meant seeking and maintaining something that felt like connection, right? Like at its
mhm,
core, that's what we needed from our parents. And our parents maybe didn't have what we needed, and so we found ways to get it. And that just became the only way we knew to exist in this world. And that's the only way we knew to exist in relationships. So it's not anything, you're not broken. It's not something to be ashamed of. And it's not even your parents' fault necessarily. And I mean, I'm not going to say nobody's, but my parents did the absolute best they could.
mhm,
Also, they left me with some shit to deal with. And
yeah.
that's okay. We do that to our children too. It's just how relationships work. Um, the reason we talk about this stuff is so we can start to see it and we can be like, oh, I could work on that. That's what's happening here. It's not a blame game. It's not a shame game. It's just an awareness so you can grow through it and life can feel better. That's a
mhm.
really important point, Janice. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
One
Yeah.
way also to kind of look and see if it's crept up in your current life or if it crept up in your childhood is if you are the emotional support person for your mom or your dad,
Mhm,
or if you're currently saying, "I'm best friends with my daughter, I'm best friends with my son." That right there, you are using your children as an emotional support person if you're best friends with them. And that definitely breeds codependency also. You can be close with your kids, but being best friends shows that you kind of gone over the line possibly.
Hmm. I'm thinking about this because I think my daughter would probably call me her best friend. Also, I
Yeah, I'm
don't.
not trying to
No,
pathologize it, but I'm
no,
just
no, no,
saying it
for sure.
can get very
I was just saying, like, right before you got here, I was telling Janice
uh,
in therapy the other day, like, my daughter has moved out. She's creating her own adult life. And in therapy the other day, I was talking to my therapist. I'm like, I really feel like I finally need to deal with some of the codependency here. Cause like, for sure, there's some stuff there that I can see it in the relationship where I'm like, I'm going to have to sort some stuff out there. And now she's like, I'm going to go live my adult life. And I'm like, oh, now is going to be that time that I learn how to process some things. It's just what it is, right? Like we don't
yeah,
all ever have it all figured out, and now it's just time for me
Mm-mm.
to grow through some stuff. That's what it
yeah.
is.
So that made me brave, Julie. Thank you for sharing that. Because Katie and I, my daughter, Katie, recently said to me something about, oh, I know why. Sorry. But anyhow, she said, you're my best friend. Now, this might be over disclosing. She had a loss in her life of someone else who lost their parent So maybe that's where that statement came from. But when she said, "You're my best friend," of course I said it back too. And she truly is. She's not my only best friend. So, but she is one of my best friends. I mean, we have that relationship that I feel like I don't rely upon her. She doesn't rely upon me. But
That's the difference.
That's
completely, like
huge.
we have
That's the difference.
support. Okay.
And
So
I'm
do
not
you
talking about adult children. I'm talking
Yeah.
about children.
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
just about to say that
Wow.
adult children might
That's a different
it's a
concept.
different thing.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about children. My daughter's 17. If I'm her best friend, there's something going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like we're not supposed to be best friends right now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a good point though. And it's something that I think, again, our listeners are going to hear that and gain something from hearing that. So it's a really important point.
Yeah.
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 But again, to be a support, to find that balance between friendship, that's not your only support system. I have both Katie and I have other people. And then I will, again, she's adult. She's in her 30s now. So it fluctuates. There have been times when I was her worst enemy,
For sure.
So,
And death does funny things to people. And I say that because death does funny things to me. When somebody passes away, it makes me go into a different kind of reflection. And I think because my own mortality comes into play. And so, I see these people that I truly do care for, and I want them to know I care for them. It's like,
oh,
I better hurry up and let them know that I actually love them or whatever it is, because you get caught up in the day-to-day, you get caught up in life, you get caught up on all of those things, and death stops that shit in a heartbeat. And it really makes you turn around. It makes me turn around, and it makes me turn around and look at life, where I'm at in life. It makes me really appreciate the friendships and the people that have shown up for me. Like it does something to me every time I experience it somewhere close to me.
Yeah. And a response to an emotional crisis is not going to be your normal emotional response.
Yeah.
And so you can't look at your response in it like, a situation like that and be like, oh, clearly I'm codependent because of these behaviors. Like that's just you responding deeply emotionally to something that's big, that's a loss, that's a crisis. I don't think that's the same thing as being codependent in the day-to-day way that you live your life. That's my thought.
I love that you're asking questions, Janice, and bringing your own personal stuff into it. No, it's fantastic. I really do. I just wanted to say that.
Thanks. Well, I'm an open book.
Yeah.
So, and the conversation and the connection is huge. It triggers thoughts and it's late in the day for me. So I'm like, it's all going to come out.
That makes for the best podcast. So it's perfect.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
We got to remember to keep you on the late night ones. No, I'm just kidding.
I get Janice when she's loopy.
So can we talk a little bit about how codependency actually affects sobriety and recovery? Because, this is so often on this podcast, we don't really talk about alcohol at all because we all know that alcohol is really not even the main problem. But how does this show up in sobriety and recovery? Why is this important for people who have stopped drinking or who are trying to stop drinking? Why do they need to understand it?
Oh, I'll jump in on this one. I'm going to say getting sober. And because I worked a really serious program at first and followed directions from my sponsor and everyone around because I was scared to death of not making it. When they told me, Janice, this is what you're doing. This is a codependent behavior. I listened. And in a way, it empowered me to make some of those tougher decisions. Be like, no, I can't do it. I've got to put me first. Didn't mean it was easy. There was always that second thought. But at the moment, so I wouldn't lose sleep over a situation. And then I'll let someone else respond. Let me think about how it really affects after the longer term.
In new recovery, it gave me something other than me to focus on, which was the reason I continued to relapse. Because it was like, well, I got to go fix this relationship over here. And I got to make sure this person over here thinks I'm okay. And I got to mend all of these fences, and none of that was going to work had I not fixed the relationship with me first. I did that for about 4 years, in and out, till I realized, oh, that's what codependency is. It's a distraction from me really doing the real work. Um, and it was all tied up in this bow of I'm caring, I'm loving, I want to mend all these fences that I tore down. And in reality, it was just an excuse not to focus on myself at first. Yeah.
It's
So,
such the weirdest thing, because in early recovery, one of the messages I heard was, you're selfish. And it, because you don't really understand what the definition of that is, you just kind of feel like a shitbag. And when you turn around and go, well, I have to start doing shit for myself, well, that feels selfish, especially when I've been accustomed to abandoning myself to an epic level. And I didn't know that. I couldn't tell you that at the time. But taking care of myself, getting to know myself, felt absolutely more selfish than anything I was ever doing prior to. Anything. And yeah, I had to be selfish. I had to say no. I had to, those were the hard things. The hardest thing to do was say no and actually start taking care of myself. Like, that sounded stupid. I'm a man. I don't need to take care of myself. I need to take care of other people. I need to provide. I need to do all that stuff. No, no, none of that shit mattered. I mean, it did, not to the level of getting to know myself and really trying to understand. I think this is what Sean was getting at. What makes you tick? What is it? What's going on underneath that veil that is so important for me to touch again? And that's me. And that's where all the important things started.
every relationship you have is a direct reflection of the relationship you have with yourself.
Yes.
So if you don't have a healthy relationship with yourself, all the other ones are just going to be a shit show. That was my experience anyway. No.
100%. Your shitty relationships are probably a reflection of the fact that you have a shitty relationship with yourself.
Or fake
That's
relationships.
a hard pill to swallow.
I feel like my relationship with myself was fake, right? I was just pretending all the time. And I feel like all of my relationships felt fake too, especially once I quit drinking and I could actually look at them with some clarity, which was a terrifying thing to recognize when all of these people that you've built your life for, and you start looking at it and you're like, is this whole thing a sham? Like, that's scary and big and heavy. And it's the kind of thing you don't want to look at. And so you just try not to look at it. I think when I think, like, related to recovery, sobriety, so much of my journey comes from shame and not being good enough. And so when I quit drinking and I stayed codependent, then I just had to deal with the fact that I never felt good enough. And alcohol was my way of dealing and coping. And so then I was just looking around, like, what else can I do to stop feeling like I'm not good enough? Well, I can hustle harder. I can try even harder to meet more needs and do more for these people. Now that I'm not drunk all the time, I have more energy and I have more capacity to give to the people so that I can feel good about myself. Like, that's how I ran with it. That's absolutely what I did the first time I quit drinking. And eventually, that didn't work out because that's, I spent a lot of time when I was drinking, sitting around, not doing a lot, not putting much effort. I didn't have the energy. I think a lot of us felt that way. And so when I stopped drinking, I was like, oh, I have so much time now. I have so much energy now. And I gave it to everybody else. It never occurred to me to stop and, like, figure out what maybe I was needing. I just wanted to give to other people so I could not focus on what I needed, and so I could try to not feel bad about myself.
If you look at it, and somebody told me this a long time ago and it really stung, but it's so manipulative to do that. It is so manipulative to be what you need me to be so you'll like me.
Oh, yeah. I
And
said
was
that to
like,
Steve
ooh,
early on. I was
whoa,
like, oh my God, I manipulate
little
people.
empathic.
Yeah, it felt awful, and also it was really true.
It was
Um,
so true. But
yeah,
like that's what I'm able to like, okay, I don't want to do that. So I'd
right.
rather be honest and direct than do that.
Mhm.
Because that felt sleazy
Yep. Yep, I
for
remember
me.
having the exact same realization pretty early on. I was actually reading the book Codependent No More, which I think like we have to bring
Yeah,
up at some point in
Melody
this
Beattie.
conversation. Melody Beattie wrote a book called Codependent No More that if you're even thinking that some of this stuff sounds familiar to you guys, to our listeners, go get the book, read it. It's full of journal questions. It helps you reflect on your behaviors. But that was the book that as I was reading it, I was like, "Oh my god, I am a manipulative bitch." Like, I was so disgusted with myself. Also, that feeling, to Sean's point, made me change some things real quick because that's not how I wanted to be, and I thought I was being nice. We
Yeah,
all think we're being this nice, generous, loyal person, and then you stop and you look at it and you're like, no, no, that was just manipulation for my own convenience and for me to feel good. And that's gross. It doesn't feel good.
yeah,
Yeah, but if it's what you grew up knowing, if it's what you learned,
For
some
sure.
people don't know that it's manipulative. Like when I was
of course.
confronted, like, you know, I'm going to do a favor in order to get a favor later on. That's manipulative, but I never realized it until someone pointed it out to me because it was just
Definitely.
so ingrained. Doesn't everyone do it that way? You know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And again, this is all just stuff we grew up doing, stuff we learned, survival skills and mechanisms.
mhm.
It's just when you finally become aware of it, you can be like, oh my God, I don't want to do that anymore. It doesn't mean like, and somehow, I don't know, I guess I remember talking to Steve about it. I didn't even feel like a bunch of shame. I was just like, oh, ew, here's a
Yeah,
behavior that and I've done that a lot over the years. I think that's kind of been the cool thing with having somebody to talk to throughout this whole process is I can talk about this behavior that's kind of gross, but just be like, well, it makes sense why I'm that way. But
Yeah,
now that I see it, we're gonna have to make some changes because I don't want to do that anymore.
that's
but
such a
what I
healthy
like what you guys are saying though is that most people do this. This is not like subjected to these four people on the screen. The
Yeah.
majority of at least the Western population does this.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is individuals in recovery don't have that luxury to participate in that behavior if they want long-term meaningful sobriety.
Hmm.
Other people can be codependent the rest of their life and not have hardly any consequences. For this alcoholic, there's extreme consequences if that behavior continues. So I think that's the distinction when it comes to codependency, at
Hmm.
least in my world.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
in
well,
relation to recovery, for sure.
yeah, no, I'm
Absolutely.
gonna say you can destroy yourself from your codependency as well. It's not just us in recovery, but I absolutely agree with you. You have to address those issues, otherwise the potential for relapse is just too high.
It's
Too
a it's a common coping mechanism
Mhm.
to try and feel comfort somehow, some way. And over time, it compounds and we find a way to reward ourselves for it somehow, some way. And it becomes something we just repeat. It becomes normalized. We normalize it from a really, really young age. And we find people that confirm those beliefs along the path until we become self-aware enough. And in this case, for us, we quit drinking and we had to start looking inside internally, self-reflect to see that, oh, this isn't actually something that's working.
Hmm.
So this is something that needs to change. And reading that book, even if you don't feel like you're codependent and that's not something you experience, reading that book is just pick it up and read the damn thing because it's a brilliantly written book and there will be stuff that you will have experienced in life and you will be able to relate to in that book on a very human level.
It's a
Right?
great relationship book in general.
Yeah, it is.
For
It
sure.
really is.
Somebody, I was maybe a couple months into sobriety when somebody suggested I read that book, and I was like, "Psh, I'm not codependent." And then I read the book and I was like, "Oh my God, I have more things than I knew." Like, and I think that that happens for a lot of us. I think too, to this point, codependency is just another way to tolerate things that really we shouldn't be tolerating. Just like alcohol, just like perfectionism, just like people pleasing, just like there's so many of these different behaviors that we talk about here that are, this is my way of tolerating something that I really shouldn't be tolerating. It makes it easier and more comfortable for me to put up with this thing in my life, whatever that is. Whether it's, a relationship issue or something. And it falls in line with all of those other things. It's just another behavior that once you remove that behavior, you have to figure out what it is that you were tolerating and then, make some changes in your life. If we start talking about like, how do you actually start untangling these codependent patterns? How do you start undoing them? How do you start healing from the codependency in a way that lets you move forward?
Well, again, I'll start in because as we were talking to, I thought, yeah, I was really good about setting some limits and boundaries at first because I had not only, well, I had the backbone of my sponsors and my recovery peers kind of borrowed their backbone. But then I hit kind of a sober bottom. And that was also another turning point where I realized, okay, so the first part of healing from my codependency was setting those boundaries and getting comfortable with it step by step. And then I had to dig a little bit deeper and look at like the insight I have now about it and the patterns. I had to look at those and confront them. But I think for me, to answer the question first, it began with simple little steps, being comfortable saying no, being comfortable understanding that people were going to push back when I said no. Like you were saying, Steve, about how family said, "Oh, you're selfish." I'd be, okay, I, I, this may appear selfish and not arguing back in a sense and just accepting it and then running to my sponsor and going, "They called me selfish." And she's like, "No, this is what you have to do." Getting that support. So it meant taking those small steps and getting from support from the healthier people in my life. That's where
Mhm.
I began. Where did you guys begin?
I don't think you just like cut off codependency like it's a limb that has gangrene. You know what I mean? You don't just go to the hospital and then like chop it off and you're finally free of it. I think you slow. I think in my case, I slowly developed habits that were for me and from me, as opposed to for someone else, so I felt better. And when it was for me and from me, and then I looked at it in the mirror and I go, is this the right thing to do? Is this, for the overall benefit of everything? And if I could answer some really fairly simple questions and the answer to those were yes, then I figured I was on the fairly right path, even though, yeah, I still got it wrong. But that was like the key that unlocked it all. It wasn't fast. It wasn't immediate. It was talking with other people that had experienced the same sort of thing and listened to what worked for them. Because I didn't know what was going to work for me. I didn't even know I had a problem until I got to the point where I had a problem. So
Mhm.
it was slow and it was methodical and it wasn't the hard or the easiest thing to come to terms with because it meant that I had to come to terms with the fact that I wasn't I had really abandoned myself for a really long time, and that hurt. That's the hurt. That was the hurt that I think I was avoiding the entire time.
Massive grief.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here just reflecting on that, and I can feel the tears start kind
Mhm.
of welling up back there because I remember going, "Wow, I can't believe that this is where I've ended up." But here I am.
Mhm.
I'm trying to figure out, like, because I agree with Steve there that it's very layered. It's it's one of those things where you start turning over a rock and then you look underneath, you're like, my God, there's more rocks I gotta turn over. It's like a layer of an onion. It just goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And 20 plus years later, I'm still codependent as hell on certain days. So it just is what it is. But I think at the beginning, if somebody would have told me, pay attention to the resentment, like Janice said earlier, pay
Mhm.
attention to the areas in your life where you're resentful, right? Where you have put yourself in the victim mentality. And then ask yourself, how did I contribute to that? You're going to find some codependency, right? And then that's going to taste like a loaded dog poop, but chew on it for a little bit, swallow it, be like, okay, now what do I do? Right? And then boundaries, of course, but when I start getting to a level of acceptance of other people and not getting involved in their process on how can I fix them so I feel okay, but allowing them not to feel okay and me accept that they don't feel okay and me to be okay that they don't feel okay, that is a very liberating experience, but it just takes a lot of work.
Mhm.
And like Janice was saying, the boundaries that we set with people isn't about me setting a boundary with you. It's about me setting the boundary with myself that I won't do what I said I wasn't going to do.
Mhm.
Right.
Right? That's like the epitome of codependency is when I draw a red line, let you walk over it and be like, okay, no big deal. Let's go have drinks. So, but at the beginning, just like that low hanging fruit, and the best way to identify that is where are my resentments, and you're going to find some codependent behaviors. And then just
Mhm.
build on that. And like Steve said, it goes on forever, in my opinion. It's not
It
as
does.
intense
It
anymore.
doesn't
It's not as
stop.
intense. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think like untangling codependent behavior is hard because by definition, it involves other people and it involves relationships. And to me,
Hmm.
anything involving a relationship is even more complicated and more difficult than if it's just me doing work on me, right? And in a codependency situation, it has to involve other people. It inevitably will. And generally it involves disappointing people and letting people down and making people unhappy. And that is terribly, terribly uncomfortable when you've created your whole life around making sure people are happy and comfortable. And I know for me, like, I mean, we have these relationships, we've had them forever, whether that's, with our spouses or our parents or our kids or whatever, and they know us to be a certain way. So when we start being a different way, then it creates all kinds of friction and all kinds of, well, why are you this way? Why are you doing that? And you're mad at me and whatever. And really we're like, no, we've just decided to take a step towards something healthier. But they don't understand that. They just see this change that's putting them out because we're not giving ourselves so much. And so it creates a lot of friction in relationships and it's hard. And for those of us who like to keep people happy, that's a really difficult thing to do. And I know for me it was like little things. Speaking up about what I wanted. Like if everybody wanted to go do something and I was like, actually I'd really rather stay home today. I think I'm just going to stay home today. Like that sounds so little, but for me, it took a lot of courage to even just say the little thing and be like, Actually, I'm going to tend to my needs right now. That's just what I'm going to do." And there are going to be people listening right now who are like, "No, I couldn't do that. I need to, if the whole family's going out for dinner, I'm going to go." Of course, that's what you do. It doesn't matter if I feel like I can't handle anything else. I still have to go. Right. But it's those little tiny choices of, no, I'm going to choose me this time that start breaking up the codependent bonds, I think. And it's, I say this in all of sobriety, it's 1,000 tiny little steps. It's 1,000 tiny little choices. It's not one big thing that you do. It's never one big change. It's one decision after another that eventually start creating this shift that feels healthier and stronger, and like something that you can actually manage and is sustainable. Um,
Since we're on books, I'm just going to throw this one out there and then I'll give it
yeah,
back to you.
yeah, yeah.
If you're a man out there, go ahead and read No More Mr. Nice Guy,
Hmm.
Mhm.
because that is at least at this point in time, because I haven't read too many more books, but that's like the male version of Codependent No More. Phenomenal book. If you feel like you're a nice guy, and if words like nice guys finish last or something that come out of your mouth because they came out of mine, go and read that book.
And if you're a
Absolutely.
woman who has a man in your life that you love, go read that book. Just saying. It's a fantastic book for anybody to read. It changed my view on why men are the way they are sometimes. And it's good. Go read that book. Yeah, we could probably sit here and give book recommendations all night. But have you read that book, Sean? Are you familiar with the book?
I am. Melody Beattie also did Beyond Codependency. Kind of
Okay.
living with Beyond Codependency is really good. It's another woman, my mentor. Her name's Pia Melody. She passed away a couple of years ago. Facing codependency. It's a different take on codependency, but if you want to get to the heart of where it comes from, it's a really good. Sorry, Pia, but it's a kind of a boring read, but it's very good.
Awesome.
It's thick. It's dense. It's
Mhm.
dense.
I think that's how Codependent No More was for me. It took me a long time to get through it because I needed to read a paragraph and like digest it and chew on
Yeah.
it a little bit and then figure out what that looked like in my life before I was ready for another. Like it was paragraph by paragraph for me. But I think sometimes
Yeah.
those are the best books.
And
Julie,
I,
what you said a minute ago is really important as far as relationships are concerned, especially new relationships in recovery. You start acting differently, and the people in your life are just as codependent as you are on them, they are on you. And when you start changing behaviors, families fit like this, even if it's dysfunctional, you learn how to work like this, and all of a sudden you're doing something different. And they're like, what's going on? Over time, they will learn how to navigate it. But at first, it's why my first marriage fell apart, because my ex-wife was not willing to change with me.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think, anyway, yeah.
No, it's a good point, and I actually like the way that you described that. I've got a similar description that involves drawing things on a piece of paper, so I appreciate the visual right there. I think that's
Yeah.
so important to understand. Once we step out of a relationship and start healing and changing and smoothing over our edges, it makes the whole thing really messy for a while, and everybody else has got to be all the people in your life that are going to stay in your life have got to be willing to start smoothing some of their edges too, so that things start fitting again. And that's a process and it takes time. So don't be surprised if you do start stepping away from some of your codependent behaviors, if it feels very messy and painful and confusing. And, there's going to be a lot of that there. Just because people aren't happy with you doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. That was a hard lesson for me to learn, but it's so important because you can't keep everybody happy. And if you're going to start tending to yourself, people are going to be disappointed sometimes. And that's also okay for them to be disappointed sometimes. They can handle it.
well, it's helping them in the long run too, actually.
Yes.
We don't want to train people to be, having a codependent person in their life to pick up after them and take care of them. And the long run, that's like with boundaries. Boundaries are, just guidelines that help define relationships. And ev- I like what you said about, for relationships, if they're going to be in your life, they have to grow. It sometimes is going to take a while.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So can we talk just a little bit really quick about self-worth and how self-worth plays into codependency? Because for me, I know that for years, I knew I struggled with self-worth. I knew that was a big problem. And I was always journaling, like, how do I improve my self-worth? I didn't realize that codependency was a huge part of the problem. But how does self-worth play into codependency and this whole picture?
Well, I think as you change those behaviors with the codependent behaviors, your self-worth is going to improve. And part of that's just getting comfortable putting yourself first because we're trained. Oh my God, I can't remember how many times I was told that, not to be selfish, as a child, as a wife, as a friend, because I put myself in relationships like that. And when I tried to stand for myself. So as you set those limits, you go, oh, I, I do like this part of myself. I can heal. And it's very empowering.
Hmm.
Part of that's reframing too. Reframing when someone resists, that can be a good thing. Let's not just, put in an aspect of like an athlete, a good coach will push an athlete to go just one step farther, push a little bit past the pain in order for the growth. And sometimes that happens in relationships and in our own personal worth too.
Definitely.
So, how often did we all hurry up and respond
Hmm.
in a kind way or in a nice way or whatever it was, so we didn't have to wait for their response?
Mm.
How many times did we step in and fill the silence in a conversation because it was awkward and that didn't feel good for me, but I never really got their response because I responded by saying, "I'm sorry," before they had a chance to actually own anything. And so I go to this, and Julie knows where I'm going with this, because this is literally how my self-worth changed. Was I realized I said sorry for everything. And when I realized that, I redefined what sorry meant to me and then stuck to that definition. And as soon as I stuck to the definition, I had to stop and pause and figure out what the hell I was going to say next. And it allowed other people to respond instead of me respond in turn before them, or to frame it in a way where I could take the responsibility so you didn't have to, and so we could walk away comfortable. When I did that, I was very surprised to see that most people ended up taking a fair amount of the responsibility of whatever their side was fairly willingly. Because most people want to do good.
Mm-hmm.
Most people do, in general. But to take this, where does self-worth play? Once I really started down that path and understanding, because that me not saying sorry meant I was essentially saying no without saying no, and then I would continue to find the courage from there on. And that's kind of that's where it all started. That's what worked for me. That one thing, and I couldn't believe it. I remember telling Julie, I was like, "You're not going to believe this," and it was just that simple. My mind blown,
Mm-hmm.
sitting there trying to figure out what language I was going to use instead, and then finally somebody across the way going, "Oh yeah, I'll go ahead and take care of that." And I was like, "Shit, that was something I was going to do."
That's funny.
Yeah, I think the self-worth or the self-esteem is just the foundation of this whole thing.
Mm.
The lack of self-worth and self-esteem was the foundation of my alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
And so the foundation of my sobriety has to be the exact opposite of how I felt when I was drinking.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I know to build self-esteem is to do esteemable behaviors. I always use the metaphor of 80% of the time I pick salad because it's healthy for me. 20% of the time I pick pizza because it's a want, it's not a need. I want to be able to balance that, but I want to take care of myself. Now, lately I've been picking pizza more than salad, I'll be honest. But what I mean by that is when I do self-esteeming behaviors, when I practice self-love, and I'm not talking about kissing myself in front of the mirror, but saying, hey, family, I can't go to dinner tonight. Well, why not? Because I'm taking care of myself and you want me to take care of myself, so I'm not a jerk to you later. I'm going to take care of myself so I can take care of you later. That is self-esteem, and that just builds over time. The more esteemable behaviors, the more self-esteem, more self-worth you have.
Mm-hmm.
Also, not listening to the people that aren't in the game. Brene Brown talks about that. Not taking advice or criticism from people that aren't in the arena, right? I just don't listen to people that aren't doing the job, doing the work. It's
Mm-hmm.
why I love this community, because you're all doing the work. So I'm interested in your feedback about how I'm living my life, because I know that you're doing the work like I am. But my next door neighbor, I could care less how he views me because he's not doing the work.
You're not going to
And that's
ask a
being
plumber
wrong.
how to do your taxes.
No, probably not.
Right.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah.
Yeah,
So anyway,
that's a great point. Okay, so closing question here. A lot of our listeners don't even know how to exist without basing everything they do on how other people feel. They can't even imagine what that would be like. So, what does it feel like when you stop basing your entire life on how other people are thinking and feeling?
Well, to be honest, at first it feels really awkward and wrong. And that's okay. That's a sign of growth. But when you get to the other side, it's pure freedom, really. Pure freedom for me.
What do you
yeah,
got, Sean?
I couldn't add much more to that other than it's very freeing after. It's kind of like bungee jumping or base jumping or parachuting. I've only been parachuting one time. It was terrifying to jump out of the plane, but man, was it freeing once I landed. Right. So just trusting yourself. I've got a suggestion for if you worry about what people think of you, go out in public and dress mismatched. Wear different shoes, wear different socks, wear a polka dot shirt and striped pants, and go walk around for an hour and watch people look at you. And you'll survive it. And you'll come home and be like, boy, that was actually kind of uncomfortable, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. You can start doing some immersion therapy like that. I know it's very unorthodox and weird, but you'll stop really caring about what people think when you realize, oh, it's just their opinion. I only care about certain people's opinion, not all of these people that I don't know.
Mhm.
But it's like
Definitely.
jumping out of the airplane. It's like, you kidding me? I would never do that. Well, you can.
Yeah. No, when I started living my life not based on what other people were feeling and what other people were thinking, I felt like I got to be me for the first time in my life. I got to figure out who I was. I got to actually really like who I was. And that was everything I'd been chasing my whole life, was trying to like who I was. And it turns out it didn't depend on how other people felt about me, about how other people felt about how other people saw me. It depended on me knowing me and seeing me and loving me. And that's an incredible feeling. That's something that I can carry with me in any part of life. That's like it's just this solid foundation that I never had before.
I want to jump on that and add something to it too. The weight of not carrying other people's stuff too is, I mean, I hate to say the word freeing again, but can be energizing, relaxing,
You
helps your
have more
dreams.
energy for other things.
Right. Seeing that you can fulfill your dreams, pursue. Yeah.
You can do what matters to you.
You can do what matters to the greater good for your family. You can do what matters to the
Mhm.
greater good, not just to you. You could, that's where the energy comes from to pursue something of meaning.
Definitely.
Where I was going to go with this was I no longer waited for someone else to feel good so I could feel good. And I feel good now because I like where I am and who I am. And that switch is ultimately where my confidence comes from, where my willingness to do hard things comes from, my willingness to stand in hard, difficult conversations because maybe we'll get to know each other better or solve the problem, or it's the right thing to do. It's where my integrity comes from now. Anyways, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Janice, for showing up, for having such a great podcast episode. I hope our listeners got a hell of a lot of value out of this one. I know I've got things to ponder after this episode. It's great to have you. This is the last episode of this season. And so I think we really one out with a bang on this last episode for our listeners. There's a couple extra episodes, spicy one that will be coming out on episode 200. This is episode 196. And so on episode 200, when it comes out, it will be Julie and I answering questions about recovery that, you know, you see online, and you see people get in arguments for or with or whatever it is. And we're going to sit down and record an episode and talk about those things from our own opinions. It doesn't mean they're right or wrong, but it'll be a way for you guys to get to know us and where we sit and how we feel about certain issues. It'll be definitely an episode where Steve goes on a rant. And by the Steve, I'm talking about this guy right here. I like to rant sometimes. And so there's that. So if you want to hear me rant, that's a good one to go to. Anyways, I will digress. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being here with us. And thank you for being here with us on season 4 when we did the switch to no alcohol needed. We changed around. We've made some improvements and flipped some switches and things on you and added new guests and consistent guests. I don't know. A lot of stuff has happened this year, this season, to try and do better and bring a better product to you guys. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sean and Janice, for being a major part of this
Thanks for having us.
new updated
Absolutely.
version.
Thank you guys.